I humbly beseech you that I may find grace in your sight, my master, O king. And when King Daoyat came to Bahurim, behold, there came out a man of the family of the house of Shaul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed still as he came. Now, let's stop for a moment. Notice this gentleman here, Shimei. So, he had an issue with King Daoyad. Of course, in the Masoretic text, it has Dawid. So, notice how Shimei had an issue with King David. And notice what he did. Notice how what he did here. This is powerful now, my family. I want you to focus on this. Notice how he cursed them with his mouth. Do you see this? Now, I want you to find out what happened here. Verse 6. And he cast stones at Daoyad and at all the servants of King Daoyad, and all the people and all the mighty men were on his right hand and on his left. You see what he did? He had a problem with him. Sectarianism was in his heart. And so now what he's doing is disrespecting the king. Not only is he verbally speaking evil and as far as cursing him, but notice how he threw stones at him and at all his servants. This is powerful now. The spirit of sectarianism can drive a man to do violence. Do you see this? But we're going to look at King Daoyad and we're going to really learn and see, did Daoyad, because he could have just went ahead and took him out easily. But let's watch and see how the man, after Master Yahuwah's own heart, conducted himself even in this particular time that was very disrespectful. Now, let's continue. Look at verse 7, my brothers and sisters. It says, and this said Shimei when he cursed, come out, you bloody man, and you man of Belial. Ooh, that's powerful. What an offense to speak those words. And those of you who are of Israel, you already know when someone calls you Belial, that's something. You know, basically, as you can look at the meaning of it, it's a very strong derogatory term. Do you see this? Someone who's wicked. So now notice what he's doing now to the one who's chosen by Abba Yahuwah to be the king of Israel. Verse 8. It says here, the Master Yahuwah have returned. Now this is what Shimei is saying. He says, the Master Yahuwah have returned upon you all the blood of the house of Shaul, in whose stead you have reigned. And the Master Yahuwah have delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom, your son. And behold, you are taken in your mischief, because you are a bloody man. Do you see that? That's powerful. And of course, we know what Absalom had did as far as he rose up against his own father. Again, seeing the sectarianism, and you all can study that as you're led, you can see how the sectarianism began to even rise up within the house of Daoyad, based on his sin that he did during that particular time with Bathsheba, our ancestor. And so Abba forgave him, but he told him that the sword would never depart from his house. So now we're seeing how Daoyad was having issues with his own son, who basically rose up against him in the kingdom. And so now Shimei is actually taunting him, if you will, with his mouth. Not only with his mouth, but actually doing violence as far as throwing stones at the king, our ancestor. Do you see this, my family? So now let's continue. Verse 9. Then said Abishai, the son of Zuriah, unto the king, why should this dead dog curse my master the king? Let me go over, I ask you, and take off his head. Whoo, that's powerful. You see, the men of Daoyad, they weren't playing around. Again, Daoyad could have easily had this man killed. But let's look at the characteristics of our ancestor, the one who had the spirit of the Messiah in him. Do you see this? A lot of people would have taken revenge on this man. But let's look at our ancestor. and see how he conducted himself despiting the man who despised him. Now let's continue. Thank you, Father, my king. Verse 10. And the king said, what have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the master Yahuwah hath said unto him, curse thou Yah. Who shall then say, wherefore have you done so? That's powerful. I want you to focus on that. I want you to focus on the fact that Yah was, look what he said here. He said here, because they was getting ready to basically take him out. But look what he said. He said, so let him curse, because the master Yahuwah said unto him, curse thou Yah. Now, the text doesn't say that Abba commanded Shimei to do that. But look at the fact that what Yah's responds, and when you look in the Hebrew, you can see it as well. Basically, what he's expressing is let it be done. If it's of Master Yahuwah, let it be done. Do you see this? Abba Yahuwah did not, the text does not say, and Abba Yahuwah commanded Shimei to do that. Do you see this? But what Yah was doing was just taking the responsibility as far as what the man was doing. He already knew, please guide me, Father, my king, to decipher it the correct way. Yah recognized everything that the man was saying. Do you see this? When he mentioned his son Absalom, Yah already knew the situation. He knew the wrong that he had done and what Abba told him about the sword never departing from his house. Do you see this? But as he's cursing Yah is telling his men who are ready to take the man out, he's telling them, let him curse. Do you see this? Now, how many believers are willing to do that? There's a lot of people who have an issue to where they're ready to go back and forth all day, wasting all type of energy, running their mouth back and forth. But look at what the king said here. Do you see this, my family? Now, let's continue. Thank you, Father, my king, for your wisdom. Verse 11, it says, and Dauyat said to Abishai and to all his servants, he says, behold, my son which came forth of my bowels, seek my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? That's powerful. So again, Dauyat recognizes Absalom was basically wanted to kill him. You see this? So Dauyat acknowledged that. Do you see this? But now notice what Dauyat says about the one who's cursing him. He says again, and Dauyat said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth of my bowels, seek my life. How much more now may this Benjamite do it? Let him alone, and let him curse, for the master Yahuwah had bidden him. That's powerful. See, even Abba could have shut his mouth right there. But notice how Dauyat, look at what he said here. He says, let him alone. Let him curse. That's powerful. For the master Yahuwah had bidden him. Do you see this? So Dauyat didn't really, he heard what the man said. It was hurtful. The man threw stones at him and his army. And the army was ready to get him. But Dauyat just said, let's keep moving. But I don't want you all to think that Abba Yahuwah is going to let that slide. Do you see this now? When sectarianism rises up, Abba is going to deal with it. Now let's continue. Thank you, Father, my king. Verse 12, it says, it may be that the master Yahuwah will look on my affliction, and that the master Yahuwah will requite me good for his cursing this day. That's powerful. Look at the high hopes of Dauyat. Even during this time, he's not speaking evil of the man. He's not speaking evil of Abba Yahuwah. You see this? Notice how Abba just, as far as this is happening, Abba could have stopped it, but obviously this situation is continuing to happen. But Dauyat just keeps moving forward. Do you see this? Now look at verse 13. It says, and as Dauyat and his men went by the way, Shimei went along on the hillside over against him and cursed as he went and threw stones at him and cast dust. Notice what Shimei did here, how he followed him. This is powerful now. I want you to look here very closely. How sectarianism affected this one of our ancestors now so much to where he was persistent. He was constantly pursuing Dauyad. Notice how it says, and as Dauyad and his men went by the way. So they're moving forward. They're not thinking about Shimei. But look at Shimei's determination. Do you see this? To curse Dauyad and throw stones at him. Now, look at verse 14. It says, and the king and all the people that were with him came weary and refreshed themselves there. That's powerful. They just kept moving forward to get to their destination. Verse 15. It says, and Absalom and all the people, the men of Yasreel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. Now, again, this is the time where you all can continue to study and look at what happened when Absalom began to basically have the kingdom. He was basically going against his own father. You see this, my brothers and sisters? Look at verse 16. It says, and it came to pass when Hushai the Archite, Dauyad's friend, was coming to Absalom, that Hushai said unto Absalom, the Almighty saved the king. The Almighty saved the king. Verse 17. And Absalom said to Hushai, is this your kindness to your friend? Why went you not with your friend? So notice how Absalom is questioning Hushai. Now listen. Verse 18. And Hushai said unto Absalom, no, but whom the Master Yahuwah and this people and all the men of Yasreel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. That was very wise what Hushai did. Do you see this now? Now look at verse 19. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? As I have served in your father's presence, so will I be in your presence. Verse 20. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you what we shall do. And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go in unto your father's concubines, which he had left to keep the house, and all Yasreel shall hear that you are abhorred of your father. Then shall the hands of all that are with you be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went into his house. Thank you, Father King, for the correction. So they spread Absalom a tent upon the top of the house, and Absalom went in unto his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of the Almighty. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with Dauyad and with Absalom. So what we see is that sectarianism even calls Dauyad's son to basically do wickedness, to disrespect his father publicly to the nation of Israel. So we can learn how from our ancestors what transpired and how these things happen. But mind you now, going back to Shimei, what he did to King Dauyad, which was a very disrespectful action that he did, we're going to see if he got away with that. So I want you all to go to 1 Kings. And again, this is what can happen when we allow sectarianism to consume our hearts. Eventually, if we don't repent, later down the road, Abba's going to have some consequences for us. So I want you to go to 1 Kings, the 2nd chapter, please. And I want to look at 1 Kings, the 2nd chapter. And let's start at the 36th verse. Now, this is interesting. This is once, as far as when you read the chapter, you'll see how Dauyad is getting old, and now Shalomah, his son, is going to become the king. So now I want you to see what happens when King Shalomah is going to be sitting in power. Now, look at verse 36. 1 Kings chapter 2, starting at verse 36. It says, and the king sent and called for Shimei and said unto him, build you an house in Jerusalem and dwell there, and go not forth there anywhere. See, one thing about sectarianism is going to be dealt with. Here we see in the context the king, Shalomah, the son of Dauyad, he's basically please guide me, Father, my king. He's dealing with sectarianism. As you read the chapter, you will see that those who rose up in insurrection, those who went against his father, they were dealt with. So now Shimei, he's going to receive certain instructions of what to do. don't think that Shalomah forgot what Shimei did as far as how he disrespected his father. Verse 37. He says, "For it shall be that on the day you go out and pass over the brook Kidron, you shall know for certain that you shall surely die. Your blood shall be upon your own head." So he gave, this is grace period now. Still grace period for Shimei. But now he's giving him specific instructions on what to do. There's a certain boundary that he can't cross. If he crosses that, that's his life. Now look at verse 38, please. "And Shimei said unto the king, The saying is good. As my master the king have said, so will your servant do. And Shimei dwelt in Jerusalem many days." Notice how Shimei now is talking differently now. As we was looking earlier, we were seeing that Shimei was, in his sectarianism, he was very, very disrespectful. Did we not see that earlier, my brothers and sisters? But now that the tables have turned, Shimei is a little bit humble now, isn't it? Notice what he says here. He says, the saying is good. So now, even though he was disrespectful to Dauyad, he's not being too disrespectful to his son, Shalomah, is he? So he's basically concurred and agreed with the instructions. Now look at verse 39. It says, "And it came to pass at the end of the 3 years that 2 of the servants of Shimei ran away unto Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath. And they told Shimei, saying, Behold, your servants be in Gath. And Shimei arose and saddled his donkey and went to Gath to Achish to seek his servants. And Shimei went and brought his servants from Gath." So again, Shimei had a problem of hearing, obviously. Notice how years went by. His servants left. Shimei forgot the commandment, what Shalomah told him. He's determined to get his servants. Now let's see what happens. Verse 41. "And it was told Shalomah that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and was come again. And the king sent and called for Shimei and said unto him, Did I not make you to swear by the Master Yahuwah and protested unto you, saying, Know for a certain on the day that you go out and walk abroad anywhere, that you shall surely die? And you said unto me, The word that I've heard is good." Notice that. Notice how Shalomah gave the man a chance. And notice how Shalomah reminded him of what he said. Verse 43. "Why then have you not kept the oath of the Master Yahuwah and the commandment that I have charged you with?" Verse 44. "The king said moreover to Shimei, You know all the wickedness which your heart is privy to, that you did to Dauyad my father. Therefore the Master Yahuwah shall return your wickedness upon your own head." See that? See, Shalomah didn't forget, nor did Abba Yahuwah did. Now, look at verse 45. "And the king Shalomah shall be blessed, and the throne of Dauyad shall be established before the Master Yahuwah forever." Verse 46. "So the king commanded Benaiah, or Benaiyahu, the son of Yehuyada, which went out and fell upon him that he died. And the kingdom was established in the hand of Shalomah." Do you see this? So what we see here is, notice how Shimei's end didn't have to come that route. But because of his disobedience, notice how his wickedness in the end, guided by his sectarianism, notice how it caught up with him in the long run. You see, my brothers and sisters. So we should be able to learn from our ancestors. Do you see this, my family? Now let's go to Mark chapter 4. Actually, thank you so much, Marquine. Let's go here. We're going to go to the New Testament. And actually, we're going to go to Mark. Thank you, my father, my king. Mark chapter 14. And this is dealing with our master and how sectarianism, he had to deal with it when it was trying to creep up and move upon his disciples. Now, let's start at verse 1. Mark 14, starting at verse 1, please. It says, after 2 days was the feast of the Passover and of unleavened bread. And the chief priests and the scribes sought how they might take him by craft and put him to death. Again, notice the issue. Notice this. This is a powerful. Notice the issues that the chief priests and the scribes had with Master Yahushua. And notice what they did. Notice how they wanted to kill him. Do you see this? Now, let's look at verse 2. But they said, no, not on the feast day, lest there be an uproar of the people. So we can see what they said. And we can see how, as far as how conniving they were. They didn't want to do it on a feast day. You see this? Because they knew it would cause the people to be angry. Verse 3. And being in Bethany, in the house of Simon or Shimon, the leper, as he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment, of spikenard, very precious. And she broke the box and poured it on his head. Now this is powerful what this woman did. She brought some very expensive, precious ointment that she was going to do. As far as what she was going to do is put it on our master's head, as far as to just show how much she valued him. I want you to see how our ancestors, the apostles during that time, how they reacted to that. Verse 4. And there were some that had indignation within themselves and said, why was this waste of the ointment made? I want you to see here, and this is not to demonize our ancestors, but it's just to show you how sometimes things can happen and people can have a misunderstanding. And because of that misunderstanding, indignation can come within. Do you see this? Notice how they were angry at that. Do you see this? Now, I want you to see what they said, and they have a reason why. So let's investigate that. It says, for it might have been sold for more than 300 pence, or denarian, and have been given to the poor. And they murmured against her. So what's very interesting is now they were justified according to themselves of how they viewed that. It was a misunderstanding, of course, but they were upset because they thought it was a waste. And, you know, as far as their intention, it was to give to the poor. So they had a reason why. But notice how during that particular time, notice how they murmured against her. Do you see this, my family? Now I want you to see how Master Yahushua responds to this misunderstanding. Verse 6. It says, and Yahushua, of course, this is the Greek form, but again, for those of you as you study and learn, as our Father King Lee, notice at the bottom of the screen how when you continue to learn, it's going to always take you back to the Master, as far as you see Joshua there. And I will proclaim to you the name Yahushua. Do you see this, my family? So it says here, and Yahushua said, let her alone. Why trouble you her? She have worked a good work on me. That's powerful. Do you see this, my brothers and sisters? Notice what Master Yahushua said. He told them to leave her alone and don't trouble her. And look how he gives clarification to what she actually did. She didn't come there to just waste it on him, for it to be a waste. Look what Master Yahushua attests what she did. Look what he says here. She have worked. It says wrought, meaning work. If you look over here in the Greek, you can see the Greek form here. You see this, my family. She has worked a good work on me. You see this? And as you can look here, you can see the same Greek word as far as in its inflective forms. That's expressing wrought and work. So notice what Master Yahushua does there. Notice how he vindicates her. He justifies what she actually did. He's bringing clarification so the misunderstanding can be quenched. Now look at verse 7. Thank you, my Father King. He says, for you have the poor with you always, and whensoever you will, you may do them good. But me you have not always. Listen what he says. She have done what she could. She is come aforehand to anoint my body to the burying. To the burying. So listen how he is justifying to the disciples and clarifying so they can have an understanding. And notice what he says here. That a lot of people, when they preach the gospel, a lot of people, especially people who are out there who do not value women, look at what Master Yahushua said here in verse 9. He says, verily, or aman, I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached throughout the whole world, this also that she have done shall be spoken for a memorial of her. That's powerful. This woman was not to be deified, no. But how she valued our king was to be told. It was to be in connection with the gospel as far as the value of the Messiah. Many of us today, we talk about him, but the question is, do we really value him? Do you see this? This woman cherished him. Verse 10. And Yehuda Iscariot, one of the 12, or Yehuda Iscariot, one of the 12, went unto the chief priests to betray him unto them. This is powerful. I want you to see how sectarianism was right there, right among Master Yahushua, right there. Notice Yehuda Iscariot, our ancestor. I want you to look at, before we go, I want you to look at the response of these wicked men. It says, and when they heard it, they were glad and promised to give him money. And he sought how he might conveniently betray him. That's powerful. This is powerful. So, my brothers and sisters, again, as we can learn to be very cautious of sectarianism, to not let it consume us, to repent, and turn from our wicked ways before it's too late. I love all of you. Continue to grow and learn. In the name of our Father and our King, our Yahuwah, Master Yahushua of Nazareth. Maranatha. Amen.